Welcome to WebLizard Cert Lab. This is an AZ-104 Azure Administrator Practice Exam walkthrough. You will see each scenario, choose an answer, and then review why the correct answer works. To keep the video moving, after each question is read, there is a 3-second silent reveal timer. If you need more time, pause during that timer, pick your answer, and then resume for the reveal. Question 1. Pick one of 4. You are an Azure Administrator for Contoso Ltd. The company uses a logic app deployed in the Order Fulfillment Apps resource group to manage order processing workflows. A new junior admin, Priya, must be able to add and remove users from the logic app's access policy, but must not be able to delete the logic app or assign roles at higher scopes. You are tasked with granting her the minimum necessary permissions. Which action should you take? Option A. Assign Priya the owner role at the subscription scope. Option B. Assign Priya the user access administrator role at the Order Fulfillment Apps resource group scope. Option C. Assign Priya the contributor role at the logic app resource scope. Option D. Assign Priya the user access administrator role at the management group scope. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Assign Priya the User Access Administrator role at the Order Fulfillment Apps Resource Group scope. User Access Administrator allows management of access assignments, RBAC, but not resource deletion or broader management. Assigning this role at the Resource Group scope limits Priya's permissions to only what is needed for the logic app within Order Fulfillment Apps, following least privilege. Exam clue. Focus on both the minimum scope, resource group, and the specific RBAC role that allows access management, not full resource control. Question 2. Pick one of 4. You are an Azure Administrator for a global healthcare provider. The hospital patient intake scheduling system uses an Azure Storage account located in the West Europe region. The scheduling data must remain available if the data center hosting the storage account goes offline, but regulatory and cost constraints prohibit storing data outside the region. Which storage redundancy option should you configure for the scheduling system's storage account to meet these requirements? Option A. Geo-redundant storage, GRS. Option B. Zone redundant storage, ZRS. Option C. Locally redundant storage, LRS. Option D. Geo-zone redundant storage, GZRS. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Zone redundant storage, ZRS. ZRS replicates data synchronously across 3 Azure availability zones within the same region, ensuring regional durability and compliance with data residency requirements. It does not copy data outside the region, unlike GRS or GZRS. Exam clue. Look for a redundancy option that protects against data center failure without sending data outside the region. Question 3. Pick one of 4. You manage an Azure App Service named Contoso Telemetry Processor that runs a web-based telemetry processing service for your manufacturing IoT solution. The app service is hosted on a standard S1 app service plan in the East US region. During quarterly audits, the telemetry processing service experiences unpredictable surges in demand, causing delayed data processing due to resource constraints. The business requires you to minimize processing delays during audit surges, without increasing costs during normal operation. You must ensure zero downtime for end users during configuration changes. Which action should you take? Option A. Scale up the app service plan from standard S1 to standard S3. Option B. Configure auto-scale rules to scale out the app service plan based on CPU utilization. Option C. Create a deployment slot and swap to it during audit periods. Option D. Add a deployment slot and route a percentage of production traffic to the slot during audit periods. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Configure autoscale rules to scale out the app service plan based on CPU utilization. Autoscale enables the app service plan to automatically add or remove instances in response to real-time demand, ensuring that the telemetry processing service can handle surges without incurring unnecessary costs during normal operation. This approach also requires no downtime. Exam clue. The scenario mentions unpredictable surges and a need to minimize cost outside audit periods. Key signals for autoscale, not static scaling. Question 4. Pick 2 of 5. You manage 2 Azure VNets, VNet registration 10.10.0.0/16 in East US and VNet course processing 10.20.0.0/16 in West Europe. Both host services for a cross-region university course registration portal. You must enable private bidirectional communication between all resources in both VNets, while ensuring traffic stays on the Microsoft backbone and is not filtered by Azure's default system routes. The solution must not require a VPN gateway and must allow both VNets to resolve each other's internal hostnames. Which 2 actions should you perform? Option A. Enable VNet peering between VNet registration and VNet course processing, and check the Allow Forwarded Traffic option. Option B. Enable VNet peering between the 2 VNets and ensure Allow Virtual Network Access is checked in both peerings. Option C. Configure custom DNS servers for both VNets that can resolve the private hostnames of both VNet registration and VNet course processing. Option D. Add a user-defined route in each VNet with next hop type Internet for the remote VNet's address space. Option E. Enable a service endpoint for Microsoft.space in both VNets. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, C. Enable VNet peering with Allow Virtual Network Access checked in both peerings. Configure custom DNS servers for both VNets that can resolve the private hostnames of both VNet registration and VNet course processing. VNet peering with Allow Virtual Network Access enables private bidirectional communication over the Microsoft backbone without a VPN gateway. Since Azure-provided DNS cannot resolve private hostnames across peered VNets, custom DNS servers are required for cross-VNet name resolution. Exam clue. Peering alone does not provide cross-VNet DNS resolution. Default peering flags are sufficient unless using NVAs or custom routing. Question 5. Does this solution meet the requirement? You manage a centralized insurance claims document workflow for multiple departments in Azure. Each department deploys resources into a shared resource group named Claims Docs RG. Leadership mandates that every new resource in Claims Docs RG must include both a department and a business owner tag at creation. You are tasked with enforcing this requirement to prevent untagged resources from being created. You create an Azure Policy definition with the require tags and their values effect for the department and business owner tags. Assign it to Claims Docs RG and set the effect to Audit. Option A, yes. Option B, no. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, no. The audit effect in Azure Policy only logs non-compliant resource deployments, but does not prevent them. To enforce tagging requirements at creation, the policy effect must be set to deny, which blocks the deployment of resources missing the required tags. Exam clue. Azure Policy audit effect is for reporting, not enforcement. Use deny to block non-compliant deployments. Question 6. Pick one of 4. You administer an Azure Service Bus message entity for the Municipal Permit Application Portal. The entity is named Permit Requests within the City Services Hub namespace. City officials report delays in processing permit requests during peak hours and want to be notified immediately if the message count exceeds 1,000 for more than 10 minutes. You must ensure that an on-call team receives SMS alerts when this threshold is crossed. You have already created an Azure Monitor action group with the on-call team's phone numbers. What should you do to meet the requirement? Option A. Create a log alert rule in Azure Monitor that queries the Azure Diagnostics table for service bus message count about a 1,000 and set the action group. Option B. Configure a metric alert rule in Azure Monitor for the active messages metric on permit requests. Set threshold to 1,000 with a 10-minute aggregation and assign the action group. Option C. Enable service health alerts for the City Services Hub namespace and associate the action group for notification. Option D. Configure an Azure Advisor recommendation alert to trigger when message processing is delayed and select the action group. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Configure a metric alert rule in Azure Monitor for the active messages metric on permit requests. Set threshold to 1,000 with a 10-minute aggregation, and assign the action group. Azure Monitor exposes service bus message count as the active messages metric. Configuring a metric alert with the correct threshold and aggregation window ensures timely notifications via the pre-created action group. Exam clue. Active messages is the metric representing message count for service bus. Metric alerts are required for real-time resource monitoring. Question 7. Pick one of 4. You manage an Azure containerized web app in an app service named Fieldwork Dispatch App. The app service is deployed using a Bicep file. A recent update requires that all deployment outputs must include the app service's default hostname for integration with a third-party field service dashboard. You review the existing Bicep file and notice that no outputs are currently defined. You add the following output. Output appservice.op string equals webapp.properties defeats.datich.mints. However, after deployment, the output value is blank. You need to ensure the output returns the actual default hostname. For example, fieldworkdispatchapp.azurewebsites.net each time the Bicep file is deployed. What should you do to fix the Bicep file? Option A. Replace webapp.properties.default. with webapp.dateitHoder in the output declaration. Option B. Reference the resource's output property using output appservice hostmyname. String equals webapp.properties.deflate.station. But ensure webapp is declared with the existing keyword. Option C. Use the reference function to retrieve the property. Output appservice.aconang string equals reference.webapp.id.default hostname. Option D. Add an explicit output for the app service's name property and manually construct the hostname using string interpolation. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Use the reference function to retrieve the property output app service predominant stripe reference webapp.id.default Huawei. The reference function allows you to access runtime properties, such as default HTTPS, that are only available after the resource is deployed. Direct property access in Bicep, for example, webapp.properties.deflate.webappsatome, exists only known at compile time, not for runtime generated values. Exam clue. Properties like default HTTP are available only after deployment, so you must use the reference function to access them in outputs. Question 8. Pick one of 4. You are the Azure Administrator for an enterprise that runs a financial transaction reconciliation platform on a VM. VM reconciliation, and the reconciliation VNet virtual network, subnet, platform subnet, 10.1.2.0/24. The VM must receive HTTP post requests from a logic app hosted in a different VNet, automation VNet, over VNet peering. Users report that the platform is not receiving requests. You verify that VNet peering is configured correctly, and both subnets use the default route table. The platform subnet is protected by a network security group, NSG platform. The NSG platform has these rules, in priority order. Priority 100, deny, direction, inbound, source, any, destination, any, port, any, protocol, any. Priority 200, allow, direction, inbound, source, virtual network, destination, any, port, 80, protocol, TCP. Priority 300, allow, direction, inbound, source, 10.1.2.0/24, destination, any, port, 80, protocol, TCP. Why are the HTTP post requests from the logic app blocked? And what should you do to resolve this? Option A. Change the source of the rule at priority 200 from virtual network to the automation VNet's address range. Option B. Add a new inbound allow rule with lower priority than 100. Source, automation VNet's address range, destination, any, port, 80, protocol, TCP. Option C. Move the rule at priority 200 above the deny rule at priority 100. Option D. Change the source in the deny rule at priority 100 from any to internet. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Add a new inbound allow rule with lower priority than 100. Source, automation VNet's address range, destination, any, port 80, protocol, TCP. NSG service tag virtual network does not include peered VNets. To allow traffic from a peered VNet, you must explicitly allow the source address range of the peered VNet. Adding a rule with a lower priority than the broad deny will permit the required traffic. Exam clue. NSG virtual network tag does not cover peered VNets. Explicit address range is needed for peered VNet traffic. Question 9. Pick 2 of 5 options. You administer an Azure Blob container in the storage account Shipment Tracking Prod, used for a logistics shipment tracking system. A temporary partner organization must be able to upload shipment data files to this container for 2 days, but must not be able to list or delete any blobs. The storage account is configured with a firewall that restricts access to approved corporate VNets only. You need to grant the partner secure, time-limited upload access from their external network, while ensuring the storage account remains protected from unauthorized access. Which 2 actions should you perform? Option A. Add the partner's public IP address to the storage account's firewall allow list. Option B. Generate a user delegation SaaS token scoped to the blob container with only write and create permissions, set to expire in 48 hours. Option C. Enable the Allow Trusted Microsoft Services to access this storage account option in the firewall settings. Option D. Create a stored access policy on the blob container and associate the SaaS token with it. Option E. Share the storage account key with the partner and instruct them to use AZ copy with it for uploads. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, D. Generate a user delegation SaaS token scoped to the blob container with only write and create permissions, set to expire in 48 hours. Create a stored access policy on the blob container and associate the SaaS token with it. A user delegation SaaS token allows precise, time-limited, permission-scoped access to the blob container for uploads only. And using a stored access policy allows you to manage or revoke the SaaS if needed. This approach avoids over-permissioning and maintains the storage account's security posture. Exam clue. Look for methods that grant the minimum necessary permissions, can be time-bound, and are revocable without exposing the entire storage account. Question 10. Matching. You manage Azure Governance for an enterprise HR onboarding document portal spanning multiple subscriptions. Leadership has 4 key governance requirements for resources supporting the portal. 1. Prevent accidental deletion of the onboarding portal storage account even by subscription owners. 2. Ensure all onboarding portal resources across subscriptions are organized for consolidated policy assignment. 3. Enforce that every onboarding portal resource is tagged with business unit and data sensitivity at deployment. 4. Allow a delegated admin in the HR DocSops group to grant contributor access to the onboarding portal resource, but not to assign roles at the subscription level. Match each governance requirement to the most appropriate Azure governance mechanism. Option A. Prevent accidental deletion of the onboarding portal storage account even by subscription owners. Option B. Ensure all onboarding portal resources across subscriptions are organized for consolidated policy assignment. Option C. Enforce that every onboarding portal resource is tagged with business unit and data sensitivity at deployment. Option D. Allow a delegated admin in the HR DocSops group to grant contributor access to the onboarding portal resource, but not to assign roles at the subscription level. Match each governance requirement to the most appropriate mechanism. Each mechanism may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Choose your matches before the reveal. The correct matches are 1, Resource Lock 2, Management Group 3, Azure Policy 4, Azure RBAC. A resource lock prevents even subscription owners from deleting the storage account, providing strong protection against accidental or unauthorized deletion. Management groups enable you to organize resources from multiple subscriptions, making it possible to apply policies and RBAC assignments at a consolidated level. Azure Policy enforces that required tags are present at deployment, ensuring compliance with organizational standards. Azure RBAC allows you to delegate specific permissions, such as granting contributor access at the resource level, without giving broader access at the subscription level. Exam clue. Each governance mechanism serves a distinct purpose. Locks for deletion protection, management groups for cross-subscription organization, policy for enforcement of standards, and RBAC for scoped access control. Question 11. Build list. You manage an Azure App Service named Energy Meter Ingest App that hosts a mission-critical Energy Smart Meter Ingestion service. The app is hosted in the production slot. Leadership requires 0 downtime updates, the ability to test changes in a live-like environment, and an immediate rollback path if issues are detected after deployment. You plan to use deployment slots for safe production updates. Arrange the following steps in the correct order to safely update the production app service using deployment slots, ensuring minimal disruption and a rapid rollback option. Choice A. Perform a swap between the staging and production slots. Choice B. Configure slot-specific settings such as connection strings for the staging slot. Choice C. If issues are detected after the swap, perform a swap back to restore the previous production version. Choice D. Create a new deployment slot named Staging for Energy Meter Ingest App. Choice E. Warm up the staging slot by sending test requests or using the app warm-up behavior before the swap. Choice F. Deploy the updated application code to the staging slot. Put the steps in the correct order before the reveal. The correct order is 1. Create a new deployment slot named Staging for Energy Meter Ingest App. 2. Deploy the updated application code to the staging slot. 3. Configure slot-specific settings, such as connection strings, for the staging slot. 4. Warm up the staging slot by sending test requests or using the app warm-up behavior before the swap. 5. Perform a swap between the staging and production slots. 6. If issues are detected after the swap, perform a swap back to restore the previous production version. This sequence ensures that the staging slot is created and configured before any deployment, that the new code is validated in an environment identical to production, that the slot is warmed to avoid cold starts, and that swap operations provide both a seamless go-live and a rapid rollback path. Skipping steps or changing the order could result in downtime, configuration drift, or failed rollbacks. Exam clue. Deployment slots allow staged rollouts, configuration isolation, and instant swaps for rollback. Warming up the slot avoids cold start delays. Question 12. Does this solution meet the requirement? You manage a legal case file management system hosted on a VM in the Legal Cases RG resource group. The system stores case files on a managed disk attached to the VM. You must implement a new backup policy to meet these requirements. 1. Retain daily restore points for 30 days. 2. Allow restore of the VM and its disk from any point in the last 30 days. You create a backup vault in the same region as the VM and configure a backup policy with daily backups and a 30-day retention period. You assign the policy to the VM. Option A, yes. Option B, no. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, no. VM Backup in Azure requires a recovery services vault, not a backup vault. While backup vaults are used for some other workloads, VM Backup and restore point retention are only supported with recovery services vaults. The solution as described will not meet the restore or retention requirements. Exam clue? The backup vault type is critical. Only recovery services vaults support Azure VM backup policies and restore operations. Question 13. Pick one of 4. You manage a customer support ticket routing platform running on a VM named VM Routing in the Support VNet virtual network. Security policy prohibits assigning public IP addresses to any VM. Auditors require that administrators connect for maintenance using the Azure portal, and all RDP/SSH traffic must be encrypted in transit and not exposed to the public internet. Which solution should you implement to meet these requirements? Option A, deploy an Azure NAT gateway to the subnet and use its public IP for remote VM access. Option B, deploy Azure Bastion to the subnet and use it for portal-based RDP/SSH access. Option C, create a site-to-site VPN to your on-premises network and connect to the VM using its private IP. Option D, configure a private endpoint for the VM and enable RDP/SSH over the endpoint. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Deploy Azure Bastion to the subnet and use it for portal-based RDP/SSH access. Azure Bastion enables secure, encrypted RDP and SSH access to VMs directly from the Azure portal without exposing public IPs, addressing both the security policy and auditor requirements. Exam clue. Look for a solution that enables RDP/SSH via the Azure portal without a public IP address. Question 14. Pick one of 4. You manage an Azure Blob container in the storage account Pharmacy Prescriptions-prod that stores tens of thousands of prescription refill request files daily. These files are rarely accessed after 7 days, but must be retained for 3 years for compliance audits. Your organization wants to minimize storage costs without losing the ability to restore deleted or previous versions of files. You configure blob versioning and soft delete for blobs. Which lifecycle management policy should you implement to best meet these requirements? Option A. Move current blobs to cool after 7 days, then to archive after 30 days. Delete blobs after 3 years. Option B. Move current and previous blob versions to cool after 7 days, then to archive after 90 days. Delete all blob versions after 3 years. Option C. Delete previous Blob versions after 30 days. Move current blobs to archive after 7 days, then delete after 3 years. Option D. Move current blobs to cool after 7 days. Keep all versions and blobs in cool for 3 years, then delete. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Move current and previous Blob versions to cool after 7 days, then to archive after 90 days. Delete all Blob versions after 3 years. This policy ensures both current and previous versions are retained for compliance, moves data to lower cost tiers as access needs decrease, and uses archive only when files are highly unlikely to be needed. It balances cost savings with the ability to restore deleted or previous versions as required by compliance. Exam clue: archive tier is cheapest but slowest, and should only be used when access is extremely rare. Versioning and soft delete require lifecycle rules that include all Blob versions. Question 15. Pick 2 of 5. You administer an Azure-based fleet maintenance scheduling app used by multiple partner organizations. Partners require access to submit maintenance requests, but must not see or manage each other's submissions. The solution uses a single Azure App Service and stores requests in a shared Azure SQL database. Partners do not have Microsoft Intra Azure AD accounts in your directory. You must allow each partner to invite and manage their own users for app access. Ensure only licensed users can submit maintenance requests via the app. Automate license assignment for newly invited partner users. Which 2 actions should you perform to meet these requirements? Option A. Enable self-service sign-up for external users in Microsoft Intra ID. Option B. Configure Microsoft Intra B2B Direct Connect and assign the Guest Inviter role to a user in each partner organization. Option C. Create a dynamic group that includes all guest users and assign the required license to this group. Option D. Assign the User Administrator role to all partner users. Option E. Require each partner user to submit a support ticket for license activation after invitation. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B/C. Configure Microsoft Entra B2B Direct Connect and assign the Guest Inviter role to a user in each partner organization. Create a dynamic group that includes all guest users and assign the required license to this group. B2B Direct Connect with delegated Guest Inviter role lets each partner manage their own users without global admin access. A dynamic group with license assignment ensures all new guest users automatically receive the required license, fulfilling the automation requirement. Exam clue: look for solutions that delegate user management to partners and automate license assignment for external users. Question 16. Pick 2 of 5. You manage a hotel reservation management system that must process booking requests with minimal downtime. The application currently runs on 2 standalone VMs in the same Azure region, both deployed in a single availability set. The CTO requires the following: achieve a 99.99% SLA for the application's compute resources. Minimize the risk of service disruption from data center level failures. Scale out quickly to meet unpredictable spikes in booking requests. You plan to redesign the deployment. Which 2 actions should you perform to meet all requirements? Option A. Redeploy the VMs into a new availability set with managed disks and enable Azure Backup. Option B. Deploy the application as a virtual machine scale set, VMSS, with instances distributed across multiple availability zones. Option C. Configure an Azure load balancer to distribute traffic to VMSS instances in at least 2 availability zones. Option D. Move the application to a proximity placement group to reduce latency between VMs. Option E. Migrate the VMs to a single availability zone and enable auto shutdown for cost savings. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, C. Deploy the application as a virtual machine scale set, VMSS, with instances distributed across multiple availability zones. Configure an Azure load balancer to distribute traffic to VMSS instances in at least 2 availability zones. VMSS enables rapid scale-out to handle unpredictable loads, and when combined with instances distributed across multiple availability zones, meets the 99.99% SLA requirement by providing zone-level redundancy. An Azure load balancer ensures traffic is distributed across healthy instances in different zones, further minimizing downtime and risk from data center or zone failures. Exam clue. The 99.99% SLA for VMs requires deployment across multiple availability zones, and VMSS is the recommended approach for both scaling and high availability in this scenario. Question 17. Does this solution meet the requirement? You manage an Azure Storage queue named Transcode Queue in the storage account Media Store. The queue must be accessible only from the on-premises subnet 10.50.0.0/24 and from Azure VMs in the Media VNet, subnet processing subnet 10.20.1.0/24. You are told that public internet access must be blocked. You are considering how to meet the requirement for private, secure access from both locations. Option A, yes. Option B, no. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, no. The proposed solution does not fully meet the requirement. Although the private endpoint enables secure access from Azure VMs in processing subnet, on-premises users connecting over VPN will not be able to access the storage queue via the private endpoint, unless DNS is configured to resolve the storage account name to the private endpoint's IP address for VPN clients. Furthermore, configuring the storage account firewall to allow only the private endpoint blocks any other traffic, including from on-premises, unless they route through the private endpoint with correct DNS resolution. The solution does not mention these essential steps. Exam clue. Private endpoints require DNS configuration for cross-premises access, and firewall rules must permit traffic from the private endpoint's NIC, not directly from on-premises IPs. Question 18. Pick one of 4. You are the Azure Administrator for an enterprise that operates a research lab sample tracking app using an Azure Service Bus queue named Sample Tracking Queue. Recently, lab staff reported that some sample processing messages are experiencing significant delays. You need to identify the root cause. The Service Bus metrics show normal queue length and throughput. However, management requires evidence of when and why certain messages are not processed on time. You must implement a solution that enables you to correlate message processing delays with the specific application server responsible, and to investigate the sequence of processing events for delayed messages. Which action should you take? Option A. Create a metric alert on the active messages metric in Azure Monitor, and configure an action group to send email notifications when the value exceeds a threshold. Option B. Configure diagnostic settings on the Service Bus namespace to send operational logs to a log analytics workspace. Then use Custo queries to analyze message processing events and correlate delays to specific servers. Option C. Enable activity log export for the resource group containing the Service Bus, and use the Azure Activity Log Blade to review administrative operations affecting the sample tracking queue. Option D. Enable Service Bus Insights in Azure Monitor, and add the Service Bus resource to a dashboard to monitor queue metrics in real time. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Configure diagnostic settings on the Service Bus namespace to send operational logs to a log analytics workspace. Then use Custo queries to analyze message processing events and correlate delays to specific servers. Sending operational logs to Log Analytics allows you to capture detailed message processing events, such as message enqueued, dequeued, completed, or dead lettered, including the identity of the processing application/server. Custo queries enable deep analysis and correlation, which is necessary for incident investigation beyond simple metric thresholds. Exam clue. The scenario requires detailed, event-level investigation and the ability to correlate issues to specific application servers, not just metric monitoring or control plane logs. Question 19. Pick one of four. You are the Azure Administrator for Contoso, which operates a construction project change order portal in Azure. The solution spans 3 subscriptions: Ops Prod, Ops Dev, and Ops Test. Leadership requires that a new Azure policy blocking the creation of public IP addresses be enforced for all resources supporting the change order portal, regardless of which subscription they reside in. The organization also uses multiple management groups: Root, under which Ops, containing the 3 portal-related subscriptions, and Other Deps, containing unrelated subscriptions, are direct children. You need to ensure the policy is inherited by all current and future resources supporting the change order portal, while minimizing impact on unrelated teams. Which action should you take? Option A. Assign the policy at the Root Management Group. Option B. Assign the policy at the Ops Management Group. Option C. Assign the policy individually to each of the 3 subscriptions. Option D. Assign the policy to each resource group supporting the change order portal. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Assign the policy at the Ops Management Group. Assigning the policy at the Ops Management Group ensures all current and future subscriptions and resources under Ops inherit the policy, meeting the requirement to enforce the restriction without affecting unrelated management groups like Other Deps. Exam clue. Management group level policy assignments provide inheritance to all child subscriptions and resource groups, avoiding the need for repetitive assignments and preventing policy sprawl. Question 20. Matching. You manage a nonprofit grant application system that stores application files in a Blob container within the storage account Grant App Storage Prod. During the past quarter, several types of data loss have occurred. For each scenario below, select the most appropriate Azure Storage feature that would best enable recovery or mitigation. Each feature may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Option A. 1. A grant application file is accidentally overwritten with incorrect data and must be restored to its prior state. Option B. 2. A grant application file is corrupted by a faulty application update. You need to roll back to its last known good state from earlier in the week. Option C. 3. All grant application files become inaccessible due to a regional service outage. You must restore access to the latest data. Option D. 4. Grant application files are automatically deleted after 30 days as per policy, but you need to recover a file deleted in this way. Match each data loss scenario to the most appropriate Azure Storage recovery feature. Choose your matches before the reveal. The correct matches are 1. Blob versioning, 2. Blob snapshots, 3. Geo-redundant storage, RAGRS, 4. Soft delete for blobs. Blob versioning allows you to restore a previous version of a blob after it has been overwritten, scenario 1. Blob snapshots provide point-in-time copies of blobs, which can be used to roll back to a previous good state after corruption, scenario 2. Geo-redundant storage, RAGRS, ensures that your data is available in another Azure region if the primary region becomes unavailable, scenario 3. Soft delete for blobs allows you to recover blobs that have been deleted, even if deletion was due to a policy or accidental removal, scenario 4. Exam clue. Each Azure Storage recovery feature addresses a specific failure mode: versioning for overwrites, snapshots for state rollbacks, geo-redundancy for regional outages, and soft delete for deleted blobs. Question 21. Pick one of 4 options. You administer a warehouse inventory adjustment system that processes high volumes of inventory update requests. The application is containerized and must meet the following requirements. The container image is stored privately and updated frequently by the admin team. The workload must autoscale in response to the number of pending inventory updates without manual intervention. Administrative users must be able to roll back to previous container image versions quickly if a deployment causes issues. The solution must not require management of underlying VMs or VM scale sets. Which Azure service configuration best meets all requirements for this inventory adjustment workload? Option A. Deploy the container image directly to Azure Container Registry, ACR, and enable ACR tasks to schedule autoscaling jobs. Option B. Deploy the container image to Azure Container Apps connected to Azure Container Registry, and configure scale rules based on pending inventory update metrics. Option C. Run the container in Azure Container Instances, ACI, with an Azure Logic app to trigger new instances based on pending inventory update metrics. Option D. Deploy the container as a web app for containers on an app service plan, enabling deployment slots for rollback. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Deploy the container image to Azure Container Apps connected to Azure Container Registry, and configure scale rules based on pending inventory update metrics. Azure Container Apps integrates with Azure Container Registry for image pulls, supports autoscaling based on metrics such as pending inventory updates, for example Azure Service Bus, Storage Queue, and allows rapid rollback to previous revisions without managing VMs or infrastructure. Exam clue. Look for a solution that combines autoscaling on workload metrics, admin rollback capability, and no VM management. Question 22. Pick one of 4. You manage a telehealth appointment platform deployed on VMs in the telehealth VNet virtual network. The application tier is in App Subnet 10.10.1.0/24. The database tier is in DB Subnet 10.10.2.0/24. Application VMs in App Subnet cannot connect to a SQL Server VM in DB Subnet on TCP port 1433. You confirm the following. Route tables allow traffic between the two subnets. DNS resolution is working. The SQL Server VM's Windows Firewall allows inbound TCP 1433. The App Subnet NSG allows outbound traffic to DB Subnet. The DB Subnet NSG has these inbound rules. Allow TCP 3389 from 10.10.1.0/24, priority 100. Deny all inbound traffic, priority 200. Allow TCP 1433 from 10.10.3.0/24, priority 300. You need to restore SQL connectivity from App Subnet to DB Subnet while keeping the database subnet as restricted as possible. Which action should you take? Option A. Remove the Deny All Inbound rule from the DB Subnet NSG. Option B. Add an inbound NSG rule to DB Subnet, allowing TCP 1433 from 10.10.1.0/24 to 10.10.2.0/24 with priority 150. Option C. Change the existing TCP 1433 allow rule to use source 10.10.1.0/24, but keep its priority at 300. Option D. Add a user-defined route from App Subnet to DB Subnet with next hop set to Internet. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Add an inbound NSG rule to DB subnet, allowing TCP 1433 from 10.10.1.0/24 to 10.10.2.0/24 with priority 150. The DB subnet NSG denies all inbound traffic at priority 200. To allow SQL connectivity while keeping the subnet restricted, add a specific inbound allow rule for TCP 1433 from app subnet to DB subnet with a priority lower than 200, such as 150. This permits only the required SQL traffic before the deny rule is evaluated. Exam clue. NSG rules are evaluated in a sending priority order. A specific allow rule must match the source, destination, port, and protocol, and it must have a higher priority than a deny rule. Question 23. Pick one of four. You manage an Azure Airline baggage reconciliation service used by multiple departments. The service is integrated with Microsoft Entra ID. Leadership requires that only members of the Baggage Ops Admins group can reset their own passwords using Self-Service Password Reset, SSPR. All other users must be excluded from SSPR. You have already created the Baggage Ops Admins group and verified its membership. What should you do to meet this requirement? Option A. From the SSPR blade in Microsoft Entra Admin Center, enable SSPR for all users and configure authentication methods. Option B. From the SSPR blade in Microsoft Entra Admin Center, enable SSPR for selected users and specify the Baggage Ops Admins group. Option C. Create a conditional access policy targeting the Baggage Ops Admins group to require password reset on sign-in. Option D. Enable password write-back for the Baggage Ops Admins group in Azure AD Connect. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. From the SSPR blade in Microsoft Entra Admin Center, enable SSPR for selected users and specify the Baggage Ops Admins group. Enabling SSPR for selected users and specifying the group ensures only members of Baggage Ops Admins can use SSPR, meeting the requirement for a group-targeted rollout. Exam clue. The SSPR blade allows enabling SSPR for all users or specific groups. Conditional access and write-back are not used to scope SSPR eligibility. Question 24. Does this solution meet the requirement? You manage a restaurant supply ordering portal hosted on a VM named VM-Portal in the East US region within the Supply Portal RG resource group. The VM uses 2 managed disks and is protected by Azure Backup. Leadership has approved a plan to move VM-Portal and all its associated resources to a new resource group named Supply Portal-Prod RG in the same subscription, but in the West US region. The move must preserve the VM's configuration, OS and data disks, managed identities, and backup protection. You plan to use the Azure Portal's Move to Another Region feature for this operation. Option A, yes. Option B, no. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, no. Moving a VM to another region using Azure's built-in Move feature preserves VM configuration, managed identities, and disks, but does not retain backup protection. Azure Backup items are not moved across regions. You must stop backup before the move and re-enable it afterward. Existing backup recovery points remain in the source region's recovery services vault and cannot be transferred or used for restores in the new region. Exam clue. Azure Backup Protection does not transfer with a cross-region VM move. Backup items and recovery points are region-specific. Question 25. Pick 2 of 5. You manage an Azure Real Estate Listing Ingestion Pipeline application deployed on a VM named VM Ingestion in the Ingestion VNet virtual network. Users report intermittent failures when submitting listings, especially from remote branch offices. You are tasked with identifying the root cause of these connectivity issues and verifying whether network security rules or routing changes are responsible. Which 2 actions should you take to perform effective end-to-end connectivity troubleshooting for VM ingestion in Azure? Option A. Enable Azure Monitor VM Insights for VM ingestion and review the Performance tab. Option B. Use Network Watcher's Connection Troubleshoot feature to test connectivity from branch office IPs to VM ingestion. Option C. Run Network Watcher's IP Flow Verify tool to check if traffic from a branch office IP is allowed to VM ingestion on the required port. Option D. Review Azure Monitor metrics for the ingestion VNet subnet. Option E. Enable Azure Monitor Application Insights and check the application map for VM ingestion. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, C. Use Network Watcher's Connection Troubleshoot feature to test connectivity from branch office IPs to VM ingestion. Run Network Watcher's IP Flow Verify tool to check if traffic from a branch office IP is allowed to VM ingestion on the required port. Both Network Watcher's Connection Troubleshoot and IP Flow Verify tools are designed to diagnose end-to-end connectivity and to check if NSG or route configurations are blocking traffic. Connection Troubleshoot provides path and latency information, while IP Flow Verify specifically checks if security rules allow or deny specific traffic flows. Exam clue. Monitor Insights and Application Insights provide application-level or performance monitoring, not detailed network path or security rule diagnostics. Network Watcher tools are required for network troubleshooting. Question 26. Pick one of 4. You manage an Azure Files share named Underwriting Share in the storage account Loan Underwriting Prod. The loan processing application runs on domain-joined Azure VMs in the Loan Underwriting RG resource group. Auditors require that access to the share is strictly limited so that only members of the Underwriting Auditors Microsoft Entra security group can read underwriting files, while the Underwriting Processors group can both read and modify files. No other users or applications should have access. You must enforce these requirements using identity-based access and avoid reliance on storage account keys or shared access signatures, SAS. Which configuration should you implement? Option A. Assign Azure RBAC, Storage File Data SMB Share Contributor, to Underwriting Processors and Storage File Data SMB Share Reader to Underwriting Auditors at the storage account level. Option B. Assign Azure RBAC, Storage File Data SMB Share Contributor, to Underwriting Processors and Storage File Data SMB Share Reader to Underwriting Auditors at the Underwriting Share File Share Scope. Option C. Configure NTFS permissions on the Azure File Share using icacls.exe, granting appropriate access to the groups. Option D. Distribute the storage account key to the 2 groups and instruct them to connect using the key. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Assign Azure RBAC Storage File Data SMB Share Contributor to Underwriting Processors and Storage File Data SMB Share Reader to Underwriting Auditors at the Underwriting Share File Share Scope. Assigning Azure RBAC roles at the File Share scope ensures that only the specified groups have the required permissions on Underwriting Share, without granting broader access to other shares or requiring storage account keys. This approach meets the requirement for identity-based access control using Microsoft Entra groups. Exam clue. The scenario mentions least privilege, Entra groups, and avoiding storage account keys or SAS, which points directly to Azure RBAC at the narrowest possible scope. Question 27. Build list. You manage a city emergency alert publishing system hosted as a web app. The app uses a private endpoint for secure access from an internal VNet named App VNet. The web app's FQDN must resolve privately within App VNet and not leak to public DNS. No other VNets should resolve this name. You need to configure Azure DNS for private endpoint name resolution. Arrange the following steps in the correct order. Choice A. Test name resolution from a VM in App VNet to ensure the emergency alert system web app FQDN resolves to the private endpoint IP address. Choice B. Create an Azure private DNS zone for the emergency alert system web app private endpoint zone, such as privatelink.azurewebsites.net. Choice C. Verify that the private endpoint has an A record in the private DNS zone for the emergency alert system web app FQDN. Choice D. Link the private DNS zone to App VNet with auto registration disabled. Put the steps in the correct order before the reveal. The correct order is B. Create private DNS zone. D. Link zone to App VNet. C. Verify endpoint record. A. Test internal resolution. This sequence ensures that the private DNS zone is created before it is linked. The link enables name resolution within the intended VNet, the required A record is created by the private endpoint, and the configuration is validated by testing name resolution. Exam clue: Azure automatically creates DNS records for private endpoints only after the zone is linked to the correct VNet. Auto registration is not needed for pass endpoints. Question 28. Pick 3 of 6 actions that meet the requirements. You are the Azure Administrator for an enterprise that manages a subscription billing operations portal used by multiple departments. The portal is deployed in 3 separate subscriptions: Finance-Prod, HR-Prod, and Ops-Prod. Leadership wants to ensure the following. All costs for the portal resources are tracked by department. A single budget threshold applies to all portal-related resources across the 3 subscriptions. Recommendations to optimize cost and resource usage are reviewed monthly. You are tasked to implement a governance solution using built-in Azure features. Which 3 actions should you take? Option A. Create a resource lock at the management group level that includes all 3 subscriptions. Option B. Apply a department tag to all portal resources and enforce tagging with an Azure policy. Option C. Create a management group that contains the 3 subscriptions and assign a budget to the management group. Option D. Use Azure Advisor to review cost and performance recommendations for the management group monthly. Option E. Configure a custom RBAC role at the resource group level to restrict cost visibility to portal admins. Option F. Enable Azure Policy to audit resource locations for all portal resources. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, C, D. Apply department tags with policy, create a management group with a budget, and use Azure Advisor for recommendations. Tagging resources with department enables cost tracking by department. Management groups allow you to set a single budget across multiple subscriptions. Azure Advisor provides cost and resource usage recommendations at the management group level, supporting monthly reviews. Exam clue: Azure supports cross-subscription governance via management groups, budgets at that scope, and tagging for cost allocation. Advisor can be scoped to management groups. Question 29. Matching. You are tasked with deploying an Azure-based product warranty registration service. Each requirement below describes a different operational or architectural need. Match each requirement to the most suitable Azure compute hosting option. Requirements: 1. Ensure each customer has a dedicated, isolated compute environment with private networking, allowing for strict per-tenant separation and custom VNet integration. 2. Efficiently process unpredictable, high-volume bursts of short-lived warranty registration requests, requiring rapid scaling to thousands of concurrent workers while keeping costs low during idle periods. 3. Provide a web-based warranty management dashboard that supports custom domain TLS certificates, blue-green staging deployments, and seamless zero-downtime production swaps. 4. Scale out registration processing worker instances automatically, with built-in load balancing and automated OS patching, but without requiring containerization of the application code. Compute hosting options. A. Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets, VMSS. B. Azure Container Instances, ACI. C. Azure App Service. D. Azure Container Apps. E. Azure Virtual Machines, VMs. Option A. Ensure each customer has a dedicated, isolated compute environment with private networking, allowing for strict per-tenant separation and custom VNet integration. Option B. Efficiently process unpredictable, high-volume bursts of short-lived warranty registration requests, requiring rapid scaling to thousands of concurrent workers while keeping costs low during idle periods. Option C. Provide a web-based warranty management dashboard that supports custom domain TLS certificates, blue-green staging deployments, and seamless zero-downtime production swaps. Option D. Scale out registration processing worker instances automatically, with built-in load balancing and automated OS patching, but without requiring containerization of the application code. Match each requirement to the most appropriate compute hosting option. Each option may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Choose your matches before the reveal. The correct matches are 1. Azure Virtual Machines, VMs. 2. Azure Container Instances, ACI. 3. Azure App Service. 4. Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets, VMSS. Requirement 1 is best met by Azure VMs, which allow for full isolation and custom networking per tenant. Requirement 2 is ideally handled by ACI, which can rapidly scale to thousands of short-lived containers with minimal idle cost. Requirement 3 leverages Azure App Service's advanced web hosting features, including deployment slots and custom TLS. Requirement 4 is suited to VMSS, which provides automated scaling, load balancing, and patching for non-containerized workloads. Exam clue: look for operational specifics. Dedicated, isolated environments point to VMs. Bursty, short-lived processing is the domain of ACI. Advanced web deployment features are unique to App Service. Auto-scaling for non-containerized workloads is a VMSS strength. Question 30. Pick one of 4. You manage a school district device checkout system deployed on 3 Linux VMs, VM Device 1, VM Device 2, VM Device 3, in the Device Checkout VNet virtual network. The application tier VMs are in the app subnet 10.20.1.0/24. An internal Azure load balancer named Device Checkout-LB distributes HTTP traffic on port 80 to the VMs. The load balancer uses a health probe on port 8080 TCP. Users report that the system intermittently fails to process device checkout requests, but you confirm that all VMs respond to HTTP requests on port 80 when accessed directly. The load balancer backend pool and NSG rules allow inbound traffic on both ports 80 and 8080. DNS resolution in Device Checkout VNet is correct. When you review the health probe status in Azure, only VM Device 2 is marked healthy. The others are marked as unhealthy. What is the most likely cause of the load balancer reporting 2 VMs as unhealthy? Option A. The VM's network interfaces are missing from the load balancer backend pool. Option B. The application on VM Device 1 and VM Device 3 is not listening on port 8080. Option C. The DNS record for the load balancer's front-end IP is not propagating within the virtual network. Option D. The NSG attached to app subnet is blocking outbound traffic from the VMs to the load balancer probe IP. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. The application on VM Approval 1 and VM Approval 3 is not listening on port 8080. Azure Load Balancer health probes require the backend VM to respond on the specified probe port, here TCP 8080. If the application on two VMs is not listening on port 8080, the probe fails, marking them as unhealthy, even though they respond to HTTP port 80 directly. Exam clue. Health probe status depends on the backend VM's response on the probe port, not just NSG or backend pool settings. Question 31. Does this solution meet the requirement? You manage a clinic imaging request workflow application that stores imaging requests in a blob container named imaging-requests within the clinic store storage account. The application grants temporary write access to an external processing service by generating a user delegation SaaS token for the container, specifying a 2-hour expiry. Leadership now requires the ability to immediately revoke all external write access to the imaging request container, even before the SaaS expiry, in the event of a security incident. Option A, yes. Option B, no. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A, yes. Associating SaaS tokens with a stored access policy allows for immediate revocation of all SaaS tokens tied to that policy by removing or updating the policy. This meets the requirement for urgent access revocation, which is not possible with ad hoc, non-policy SaaS tokens. Exam clue. Only stored access policies allow revocation of associated SaaS tokens before expiry. Ad hoc SaaS tokens cannot be revoked early. Question 32. Pick one of four. You are the Azure Administrator for an organization that uses a public works service request system deployed in the Service Requests RG resource group. The finance team needs to review cost data and view budget alerts for Service Requests RG, but must not be able to modify resources or budgets. Which built-in role and scope assignment should you use to follow the principle of least privilege? Option A, assign the reader role at the resource group scope. Option B, assign the cost management reader role at the resource group scope. Option C, assign the cost management contributor role at the resource group scope. Option D, assign the owner role at the subscription scope. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Assign the cost management reader role at the resource group scope. The cost management reader role allows users to view cost data and receive budget alerts for the assigned scope without granting permissions to modify resources or budgets. Assigning it at the resource group scope ensures the finance team can access only the necessary data for service requests RG. Exam clue. The correct choice grants only view permissions for cost data and budget alerts at the minimum required scope, aligning with least privilege. Question 33. Pick one of four options. You manage an Azure e-commerce fraud review dashboard hosted as an Azure App Service named Fraud Dashboard Prod in the Fraud Dashboard RG resource group. The dashboard is currently accessed via its default *azurewebsites.net URL. Leadership requires the following changes. The dashboard must be accessible via a custom domain, frauddashboard.contoso.com. All traffic to the dashboard must use HTTPS with a valid TLS certificate. The certificate must be issued by a Public Certificate Authority, CA. You already own the frauddashboard.contoso.com domain and manage its DNS in Azure DNS. You have not yet purchased or issued any certificates. The App Service plan is standard tier. What should you do to meet all requirements with minimal management overhead and ensure the custom domain is secured as quickly as possible? Option A. Purchase a public TLS certificate from a third-party CA, upload it to App Service, then add a CNAME record for frauddashboard.contoso.com pointing to frauddashboardprod.azurewebsites.net. Option B. Map frauddashboard.contoso.com as a custom domain in App Service. Add the required TXT record for domain verification, and enable App Service Managed Certificate for the domain within the App Service. Option C. Enable HTTPS only in App Service. Then add a CNAME record for frauddashboard.contoso.com to frauddashboardprod.scm.azurewebsites.net. Option D. Create an App Service environment, ASE, and move frauddashboardprod into it. Then configure custom domain and upload a self-signed certificate for frauddashboard.contoso.com. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Map frauddashboard.contoso.com as a custom domain in App Service. Add the required TXT record for domain verification, and enable App Service Managed Certificate for the domain within the App Service. App Service Managed Certificates provide publicly trusted TLS certificates at no cost, automate renewal, and require only DNS-based domain validation. This approach meets all requirements: custom domain, public CA-issued certificate, HTTPS, and minimal management overhead. Exam clue. The scenario prioritizes minimal management and quick setup. App Service Managed Certificates are specifically designed for this use case. Question 34. Pick one of four. You manage an Azure Transportation Route Optimization Service deployed in the RouteOpt-RG resource group. The resource group is part of the App Subs subscription, which is nested under the corp-mg management group. The RouteOpt-Admins Microsoft Entra group is assigned the owner role at the corp-mg management group scope. A user named Priya is a member of RouteOpt-Admins. However, her attempts to delete a storage account named RouteOpt-Store in RouteOpt-RG fail with an authorization error. You verify she is not assigned any deny assignments or custom roles at any scope. What is the most likely cause of this issue? Option A. A resource lock is applied to RouteOpt-Store at the storage account level. Option B. Priya must be assigned the owner role directly at the RouteOpt-RG resource group scope. Option C. Priya's owner access is not effective until she logs in again after group membership changes. Option D. A deny assignment at the subscription level is blocking her access. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. A resource lock is applied to RouteOpt-Store at the storage account level. Resource locks override RBAC permissions, including inherited owner access, and prevent deletion or modification of protected resources. Since Priya has owner rights and there are no deny assignments, a lock is the only configuration that explains the authorization error. Exam clue. Inherited RBAC access is blocked by locks, which take precedence over role assignments at any scope. Question 35. Matching. You manage the networking for an Azure Enterprise Document Signature platform. The application runs on VMs in a subnet named App Subnet within the DocSign VNet virtual network. The following operational requirements must be met. 1. Only the document signature web app in App Subnet can access the Azure SQL database via a secure private connection. No other resources in DocSign VNet should be able to reach the database. 2. Admins must be able to securely manage VMs in App Subnet from the Azure portal without exposing RDP/SSH to the public internet. 3. Document signature worker VMs must be able to connect to Azure Storage endpoints using Azure Backbone Network, but should not be accessible from the public internet. 4. Only traffic from the DocSign admins application security group should be allowed to reach the web app VMs on port 443. All other inbound traffic must be denied. Match each operational requirement to the most appropriate Azure networking tool or feature. Option A. Ensure only the web app and app subnet can access Azure SQL Database privately. Option B. Enable secure VM management from Azure Portal without public RDP/SSH. Option C. Allow worker VMs to access Azure Storage via backbone network, blocking public access. Option D. Restrict web app VM access on port 443 to DocSign admins group only. Match each operational requirement to the most appropriate Azure networking tool or feature. Each tool/feature is used only once. Choose your matches before the reveal. The correct matches are 1. Private endpoint B, 2. Azure Bastion C, 3. Service endpoint D, 4. Application security group E. B. A private endpoint assigns a private IP in the VNet for Azure SQL Database, restricting access to only the document signature web app resources in the specified subnet. C. Azure Bastion allows admins to securely manage VMs from the Azure portal without exposing RDP/SSH to the public internet. D. Service endpoints enable worker VMs to access Azure Storage over the Azure backbone network, blocking public internet routes. E. Application security groups, when referenced in NSG rules, ensure only traffic from the DocSign admins group can reach the web app VMs on port 443. Exam clue. Each tool is designed for a specific networking scenario. Private endpoint for PaaS resource isolation, Bastion for secure admin access, Service endpoint for secure PaaS connectivity, and ASG for granular traffic control. Question 36. Pick 2 of 5. You manage an Azure virtual machine named Outage Response VM in the Utility Outage RG resource group. The VM uses 2 premium SSD managed disks, one OS, one data. Security policy requires that all data at rest must be encrypted using customer managed keys, CMK. The VM must support encryption at host for both OS and data disks. You are tasked with reconfiguring the VM and disks to comply with both requirements. Which 2 actions must you perform? Option A. Enable Azure Disk Encryption, ADE, with a customer-managed key on both disks. Option B. Create a disk encryption set with a customer-managed key and assign it to both managed disks. Option C. Enable encryption at host for the VM by updating its configuration. Option D. Change both managed disks to standard HDD and reattach them to the VM. Option E. Rotate the platform-managed key for each disk in the Azure portal. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, C. Create a disk encryption set with a customer-managed key and assign it to both managed disks. Enable encryption at host for the VM by updating its configuration. A disk encryption set with a customer-managed key is required to encrypt managed disks with your own keys. Enabling encryption at host ensures that all VM disk data is encrypted as it passes through the host, which is required by the policy. Both steps are necessary to meet the stated security requirements. Exam clue. Encryption at host is a separate feature from disk encryption and requires compatible disk SKUs and a disk encryption set with CMK for customer-managed encryption. Question 37. Pick 2 of 5. You manage a retail loyalty rewards processing app that writes transaction data to a blob container named rewards data in the prod rewards storage account. The storage account has a firewall configured to allow traffic only from the rewards VNet virtual network. A logic app in a different region must write transaction outcomes to the same container. The Logic app is configured with a managed identity and is granted storage blob data contributor permissions on the storage account. However, writes from the Logic app are failing with a network access error. You must enable secure and least privilege access for the Logic app to write to the container, while minimizing exposure of the storage account to the public internet. Which two actions should you perform? Option A. Add the Logic app's outbound public IP address to the storage account firewall allow list. Option B. Enable the Allow Trusted Microsoft Services to access this storage account exception in the storage account firewall settings. Option C. Configure a private endpoint for the storage account and update the Logic app to use the private endpoint's DNS name. Option D. Grant the Logic app's managed identity the storage account contributor role at the resource group scope. Option E. Enable a service endpoint for the storage account on the Logic app's subnet. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, C. Enable the Allow Trusted Microsoft Services to access this storage account exception in the storage account firewall settings. Configure a private endpoint for the storage account and update the Logic app to use the private endpoint's DNS name. Option B allows trusted Azure services, like Logic apps, to bypass storage account network restrictions securely, as documented by Microsoft. Option C establishes a private endpoint, enabling secure, region-agnostic access from the Logic app to the storage account without exposing it to the public internet. Both approaches minimize exposure and follow least privilege principles. Exam clue. Trusted Microsoft services can access storage accounts behind firewalls if the exception is enabled. Private endpoints provide secure, region-independent connectivity for PaaS resources. Question 38. Build list. You manage an Azure call center workforce scheduling system running on VMs in the Scheduling RG resource group. The system writes shift change requests to a log analytics workspace named Scheduling Logs. You need to set up a workflow that notifies the operations team via email whenever the number of pending shift change requests exceeds 100 in any 5-minute window. Additionally, to avoid alert fatigue, you must ensure that notifications are suppressed if a similar alert has already been triggered for the same condition in the last 30 minutes. Arrange the steps in the correct order to implement this alerting workflow using Azure Monitor. Choice A. Associate the alert rule with the action group. Choice B. Create a log analytics query that counts pending shift change requests over the last 5 minutes. Choice C. Add an alert processing rule to suppress duplicate notifications for 30 minutes for the same signal. Choice D. Define an alert rule in Azure Monitor using the log analytics query with a threshold condition of pending shift change requests greater than 100. Choice E. Create an action group that sends email notifications to the operations team. Put the steps in the correct order before the reveal. The correct order is B, create query, D, define alert rule, E, create action group, A, associate action group, C, add alert processing suppression rule. This order reflects the correct Azure Monitor alerting workflow. First, define the query to detect the signal, B. Next, create the alert rule and specify the threshold, D. Then, configure how notifications are sent, E. Link the alert rule to the notification method, A, and finally, set up an alert processing rule to suppress repeated alerts for the same condition within a 30-minute window, C. Exam clue. Azure Monitor alerting requires signal definition, alert rule creation, notification setup, and optional processing rules for suppression. The timing of suppression is handled last. Question 39. Does this solution meet the requirement? You manage a tax document intake portal hosted as an Azure App Service named Tax Intake Portal in the Tax Docs RG resource group. The development team frequently deploys new versions of the app, but you must ensure the resource is not accidentally deleted during updates. You want to enforce this protection at the resource group level so that all resources in tax.docs.rg are covered. You consider applying a resource lock with the appropriate level. Option A, yes. Option B, no. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A, yes. A cannot delete lock at the resource group level prevents deletion of any resources within the group while still permitting modification, updates, to those resources. This is the recommended approach for protecting resources from accidental deletion without interfering with normal update operations. Exam clue. Be attentive to the distinction between cannot delete, blocks delete, allows update, reskips delete and update, and RBAC deny assignments. The scenario specifically requires update operations to remain possible. Question 40. Pick 3 of 6 options. You manage an Azure App Service named Vendor Onboarding App, Standard S1 tier, that hosts a critical procurement vendor onboarding platform. The custom domain and TLS binding have already been configured. The following remaining operational requirements must be met. Minimize downtime and risk during deployments, with ability to validate changes before production swap. Enable automatic scaling based on CPU usage. Ensure daily backups of app content and configuration with 30-day retention. Avoid unnecessary cost increases or use of unsupported features for the current tier. Which 3 actions should you take to meet the remaining operational requirements while preserving deployment safety and cost efficiency? Option A. Upgrade the app service plan to Premium v3 to access staging slots and advanced scaling options. Option B. Configure a deployment slot for staging and use swap after validation. Option C. Enable autoscale for the app service plan based on CPU percentage. Option D. Configure daily app service backups with a 30-day retention policy. Option E. Bind a custom domain and upload a TLS certificate for secure access. Option F. Enable always on and increase the instance count to 3 for high availability. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, C, D. Configure a deployment slot for staging and use swap after validation. Enable autoscale for the app service plan based on CPU percentage. Configure daily app service backups with a 30-day retention policy. These 3 actions directly address the requirements. Deployment slots provide deployment safety and validation before production swaps. Autoscale on CPU ensures the app scales automatically with demand. Daily backups with retention secure app data and configuration. All are supported and cost-effective in Standard S1 tier. Exam clue. Standard tier supports deployment slots, autoscale, and backup. Avoid unnecessary upgrades or partial features. Question 41. Pick 1 of 4 options. You manage the network for an Azure-based Fleet GPS event processing service. The service VMs are deployed in the processing subnet 10.10.2.0/24 of Fleet VNet. An NVA, Network Virtual Appliance, for security inspection resides in the NVA subnet 10.10.3.0/24 in the same VNet. Fleet VNet is paired with Core VNet to allow access to on-premises resources via VPN. A user-defined route, UDR, is configured on processing subnet to send all 0.0.0.0/0 traffic to the NVA's private IP as the next hop. However, you discover that outbound traffic from the service VMs to on-premises servers in Core VNet bypasses the NVA and flows directly via peering. You must ensure that all outbound traffic from processing subnet, including traffic to on-premises, is forced through the NVA for inspection. Which change should you make to meet this requirement? Option A. Modify the UDR on processing subnet to add a route for the on-premises address space with the NVA as next hop. Option B. Move the NVA to core VNet and update the peering to allow forwarded traffic. Option C. Enable Use Remote Gateways on the Fleet VNet peering. Option D. Remove the 0.0.0.0/0 UDR and rely on the default system routes. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Modify the UDR on processing subnet to add a route for the on-premises address space with the NVA as next hop. Azure system routes prioritize VNet peering for address spaces known via peering, causing traffic to on-premises to bypass the NVA. To force all outbound traffic through the NVA, you must add a UDR for the on-premises address space, e.g. 192.168.0.0/16, with the NVA as the next hop. This overrides the system route for peering and ensures all such traffic is inspected. Exam clue. System routes for peered VNets take precedence unless a more specific UDR is in place. 0.0.0.0/0 covers only traffic not matched by more specific system routes. Question 42. Pick one of four options. You are the Azure Administrator for an organization with a digital evidence archive system that stores case files in a Blob container named Case Files in the Evidence Store storage account. The system generates thousands of new evidence files per day. Compliance requires that you periodically script the transfer of all new evidence blobs to a secure on-premises server for long-term archiving. The storage account is protected by a firewall, allowing only specific on-premises IP ranges. You must automate this process with minimal user interaction and ensure secure, auditable access. Which tool should you use for the scripted bulk transfer? Option A. Azure Storage Explorer with interactive sign-in. Option B. As-Copy with a SAS token scoped to the Blob container. Option C. As-Copy with storage account key passed in script. Option D. Azure Storage Explorer with Azure AD-based RBAC. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. As-Copy with a SAS token scoped to the Blob container. As-Copy is a command line utility designed for high-performance automated bulk data transfers and supports scripting. Using a SAS token scoped to the Blob container enables secure, auditable, and time-limited access for automation, meeting both compliance and security requirements. Exam clue. Look for a solution that supports automation, minimal user interaction, and secure, auditable access to Azure Storage behind a firewall. Question 43. Build list. You are tasked with creating a governed Azure subscription landing zone for a new membership renewal web application used by multiple departments. The landing zone must enforce tagging, restrict resource creation to specific regions, and ensure cost controls are inherited by all resources. You have the following requirements. All policies and RBAC assignments must be inherited by future subscriptions for other membership renewal workloads. The solution must support centralized cost management and tagging standards across all related subscriptions. The minimum required scope should be used for each configuration to maximize inheritance and minimize redundant administration. Arrange the following actions in the correct order to implement the landing zone according to best practices. Choice A. Move the new membership renewal subscription into the Membership Renewal Workloads Management Group. Choice B. Assign the required RBAC roles to department leads at the management group scope. Choice C. Configure a cost management budget at the management group scope. Choice D. Create a new management group for membership renewal workloads under your organization's root management group. Choice E. Assign the required RBAC roles to department leads at the resource group scope. Choice F. Assign Azure Policy definitions for allowed regions and required tags at the management group scope. Put the steps in the correct order before the reveal. The correct order is D. Create management group. A. Move subscription. F. Assign policies. C. Configure budget. B. Assign RBAC at management group scope. This sequence ensures all governance controls, policy, RBAC, budgets, are configured at the highest appropriate scope for inheritance. This minimizes administrative overhead, ensures future subscriptions automatically receive controls, and supports centralized cost/tag management. Assigning RBAC at the management group scope allows department leads to manage resources across all current and future subscriptions in the group. Exam clue: the order of scope, management group, subscription, resource group, is crucial for maximizing inheritance and minimizing redundant configuration. Question 44. Pick one of four. You manage a containerized invoice processing service deployed as a container group in Azure Container Instances, ACI, within the Invoice Processing RG resource group. Container images are stored in a private Azure Container Registry, ACR, named Invoice Pro ACR. The service must scale out to handle unpredictable bursts in invoice submissions, but must always pull the latest approved image from ACR. Networking for the container group must allow integration with a VNet named Invoice Proc VNet for secure access to a backend database. You have created a managed identity for the container group. The operations team reports that during scale-out events, some container group deployments fail to start, citing image pull authentication errors. All other resources are in the same region. What should you do to ensure reliable deployment and scaling of the invoice processing containers while meeting the security and networking requirements? Option A. Switch the container group deployment to use an admin user and password from ACR for image pull authentication. Option B. Assign the ACR pull role to the container group's managed identity and ensure the container group is deployed using the Azure CLI with the -- subnet ID parameter for VNet integration. Option C. Configure the container group to use a user-assigned managed identity and set the image pull policy to never. Option D. Move the ACR to a different region to reduce latency and attach a private endpoint for the container group. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Assign the ACR pull role to the container group's managed identity and ensure the container group is deployed using the Azure CLI with the -- subnet ID parameter for VNet integration. Assigning the ACR pull role to the managed identity allows the container group to authenticate to ACR and pull images securely. Deploying with the -- subnet ID parameter ensures the container group is integrated into the specified VNet, fulfilling both authentication and networking requirements for reliable scaling. Exam clue: the scenario mentions managed identity and VNet integration. Both must be configured correctly for secure image pulls and network access. Question 45. Pick 2 of 5. You manage a backup compliance reporting workflow for an Azure App Service named Backup Reporting App in the Backup Compliance RG resource group. The application uses a recovery services vault named Backup Compliance Vault for daily backups. To provide compliance evidence, the auditing team requires a report showing all backup jobs, including failures, for the last 90 days, an alert whenever a restore operation is performed on the app service. You must configure Azure to meet both requirements with minimal operational overhead and ensure the solution is maintainable for future audits. Which 2 actions should you perform? Option A. Configure diagnostic settings on Backup Compliance Vault to send backup and restore logs to Log Analytics. Then use Log Analytics to generate a custom report of backup job activity. Option B. Use the Azure Activity Log to review backup and restore events for Backup Reporting app, and set up an Activity Log alert for restore operations. Option C. Schedule periodic manual restore tests and document the results in a compliance tracking spreadsheet stored in Azure Files. Option D. Create an Azure Monitor alert rule that triggers when restore started or restore completed events are logged by the Recovery Services Vault for Backup Reporting app. Option E. Enable Azure Monitor metrics for the app service and configure an alert for changes in a backup restore status metric. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A, D. Configure diagnostic settings on Backup Compliance Vault to send backup and restore logs to Log Analytics. Then use Log Analytics to generate a custom report of backup job activity. Create an Azure Monitor alert rule that triggers when restore started or restore completed events are logged by the Recovery Services Vault for Backup Reporting app. Exporting Recovery Services Vault logs to Log Analytics enables detailed, queryable backup job history for compliance reporting. Creating an Azure Monitor alert on restore events ensures the auditing team is notified whenever a restore occurs, fulfilling both compliance requirements with minimal ongoing effort. Exam clue. Recovery Services Vault logs are required for detailed backup restore reporting and alerting. Activity log and app service metrics do not provide this level of detail. Question 46. Does this solution meet the requirement? You manage a private storage DNS configuration for lab results deployed on VMs in the app subnet of the lab results VNet virtual network. The storage account named labresults-SA is configured with a private endpoint in app subnet. Users in the same VNet report intermittent failures resolving labresults-sa.block.core.windows.net to a private IP address. Sometimes it resolves to a public IP instead. You review the DNS configuration and find that no custom DNS servers are set for the VNet, and the default Azure-provided DNS is in use. You propose creating a private DNS zone named blob.core.windows.net, adding an A record for labresults-SA that points to the storage account public endpoint, and linking the DNS zone to labresults VNet. Option A, yes. Option B, no. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, no. The proposed solution does not meet the requirement. For Blob private endpoints, the private DNS zone should be privatelink.pint.gel.windows.net and should resolve the storage account name to the private endpoint IP address. Creating a zone named blob.core.windows.net and pointing the record at the public endpoint can break or bypass private endpoint name resolution. The correct approach is to integrate the private endpoint with the appropriate private DNS zone, typically using a private DNS zone group so Azure manages the record. Exam clue. For storage private endpoint DNS, use the private link subdomain for the service, such as privatelink.hub.core.windows.net, and ensure the record resolves to the private endpoint IP, not the public endpoint. Question 47. Pick 3 of 6 actions that together best meet the requirement. You manage an Azure Storage account named Content Store that holds a blob container, Asset Uploads, used by a content publishing asset store. The system has experienced incidents where blobs were accidentally overwritten or deleted. You need to configure the storage account to maximize protection against both accidental overwrite and deletion of blobs, while allowing the system to continue normal operations. Which 3 actions should you perform? Option A. Enable blob change feed on the storage account. Option B. Enable soft delete for blobs in the storage account. Option C. Enable blob versioning on the storage account. Option D. Configure a lifecycle management policy to move old blobs to the archive tier after 30 days. Option E. Enable container soft delete for the storage account. Option F. Require secure transfer for the storage account. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B, C, E. Enable soft delete for blobs, enable blob versioning, and enable container soft delete. Blob soft delete allows recovery of deleted blobs. Blob versioning provides access to previous versions if a blob is overwritten or deleted. Container soft delete enables recovery of deleted containers. Together, these features directly address both accidental overwrites and deletions at both blob and container levels. Exam clue. The question asks for maximum protection against both accidental overwrites and deletes, requiring a combination of versioning and soft delete features for comprehensive coverage. Question 48. Pick one of four. You manage a VMSS-based quote calculation service deployed in the QuoteCalc RG resource group. The virtual machine scale set and all related resources were originally deployed using an exported ARM template from the Azure portal. The development team needs to add a custom DNS server configuration and enable encryption at host for the VMSS. You convert the exported ARM template to Bicep using the Azure CLI. After reviewing the Bicep file, you notice that some required properties are missing or hard-coded. What should you do to ensure the redeployment meets the new requirements and supports future configuration changes? Option A. Redeploy the unmodified exported Bicep file and manually update the VMSS networking and encryption settings in the Azure portal after deployment. Option B. Edit the Bicep file to parameterize the DNS server and encryption settings, then redeploy the VMSS using the updated Bicep file. Option C. Use the original exported ARM template without converting to Bicep, and add the new settings as hard-coded values before redeployment. Option D. Convert the ARM template to Bicep and redeploy as is, relying on Azure Policy to enforce DNS and encryption at host settings post-deployment. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Edit the Bicep file to parameterize the DNS server and encryption settings, then redeploy the VMSS using the updated Bicep file. Parameterizing the Bicep file ensures the VMSS can be redeployed with different configurations in the future, and all required settings, custom DNS, encryption at host, are codified in the infrastructure as code definition. This aligns with best practices for template completeness and maintainability. Exam clue. Exported templates and their conversions often lack parameterization and may omit some configuration details. These must be addressed before redeployment. Question 49. Pick one of four. You administer an Azure environment for a finance department managing a sensitive financial reporting system. The application resources reside in the Finance Reports RG resource group. A recent audit found that several existing resources in Finance Reports RG are missing the required cost center tag, violating your organization's governance standards. You need to ensure all current and future resources in Finance Reports RG have the cost center tag, and you must automatically remediate non-compliant resources without disrupting running workloads. What should you do? Option A. Assign a policy initiative with a deny effect for missing cost center tag at the resource group scope. Option B. Assign a built-in Azure policy with the modify effect to add the cost center tag if missing, and create a remediation task targeting Finance Reports RG. Option C. Assign a policy with an audit effect for the cost center tag at the subscription level. Option D. Manually add the cost center tag to each existing resource and assign a policy with append effect for future resources. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Assign a built-in Azure policy with the modify effect to add the cost center tag if missing, and create a remediation task targeting finance reports RG. The modify effect in Azure Policy allows automatic addition of missing tags to both new and existing resources via remediation tasks. Assigning the policy at the resource group scope ensures that all resources in finance reports RG are evaluated. Creating a remediation task applies a policy to existing non-compliant resources without disrupting their operation. Exam clue: remediation tasks with the modify effect are required for existing resource compliance. Deny and append do not remediate current resources. Question 50. Pick one of 4 options. You manage a regional disaster recovery solution for a scheduling system running on 2 Azure VMs in the Scheduling RG resource group. The system stores all scheduling data in a managed disk attached to the primary VM. Both VMs and disks are protected by daily Azure Backup in a recovery services vault named Scheduling Vault. Your compliance team requires that, in the event of a complete Azure region outage, the scheduling system must be restored in another region with minimal data loss and downtime. You have already enabled Azure Site Recovery, ASR, for both VMs, replicating to a paired region. What should you do to meet the compliance requirement? Option A. Initiate a restore of the latest backup of the managed disk to a VM in the secondary region using the Recovery Services Vault. Option B. Perform a planned failover of the protected VMs to the paired region using Azure Site Recovery. Option C. Export a template of the existing VMs and deploy new VMs in the secondary region, then attach the managed disk restored from backup. Option D. Configure a backup policy with a higher frequency, hourly, in the Recovery Services Vault, and restore the most recent backup to the secondary region when needed. Choose your answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Perform a planned failover of the protected VMs to the paired region using Azure Site Recovery. Azure Site Recovery maintains near real-time replication of VM disks to a secondary region and enables orchestrated failover with minimal data loss and downtime. This is the recommended solution for disaster recovery in the event of a regional outage, unlike Azure Backup, which is designed for point-in-time restores and has higher RPO/RTO. Exam clue: the scenario specifically requires minimal downtime and data loss during a regional outage, which aligns with ASR failover, not restore from backup. Thanks for watching. If some of these questions felt difficult, that is normal. Every missed question gives you a study map, which Azure service to review, which scope to check, and which distractor to avoid next time. Replay the questions that felt weak, review the exam clues, and come back stronger for the next run.